Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. Today, Aptera announced that they acquired Andromeda Interfaces. That was just a press release today, so let's just go over that. And I was curious about Andromeda because it was a little confusing because before they used Crank software, but I think I've kind of sorted out what's going on here. Um, well, as it turns out, Andromeda makes a lot of these human-machine interface devices. And they bridge the gap between the UI UX designer. So this is the user interface, user experience designer. So those are usually people that are more kind of like graphic design background. They're not as much engineers. And this company takes their vision of how they want the user interface to be and helps it interface and work with the actual hardware a little bit better. And one of their key technologies is this energy tipster interface, which I think solves a very interesting problem with EVs. The problem with EVs is that the range changes a lot based on like auxiliary power use, like heated seats or climate control, and how much regeneration you're using, and how fast you're going, what kind of grade you're driving on, you're going uphill or downhill. So all those things drastically change the range, and that's why sometimes the range that you get in an EV is different than what the EPA mileage is, or what's listed on the spec sheet of the vehicle. And that was confusing to a lot of people that aren't really familiar with EVs. Most of you guys are probably pretty familiar with EVs, so that makes sense to you. But in a car that's really efficient like the Aptera, those other things can drastically change the range, like the climate control can change the range because those auxiliary loads are a bigger proportion of the battery use because the drive component is so efficient. In that case, they wanted to make an interface that shows more clearly how changes in how you use the vehicle will change the range. So if you, in this example, and I hope they change this font because this font is weird, but anyways, in this they show that if you change to 100% regen is what I'm thinking this means, you'll get 10 more miles of range. If you turn off the heated seats, you get 10 more miles of range. If you turn off the fan, you get 5 more miles of range. Those kinds of things kind of help people decide how they want to prioritize comfort versus range, that kind of thing. And then this I think is really interesting because in this graph they kind of mapped out the roads and have given you a somewhat more accurate projection of where you can get to in your car based on the actual roads in the area. So if you're here, these are the area places you can go. That's a little bit different than the original map screen of the Aptera, and the map screens that you get in a lot of EVs these days, which just shows a circle around your location, which isn't entirely accurate, depending on how the roads are mapped out in that area. Like here is a on Aptera site. This is a interview with Brian Gallagher. He's the CEO of Andromeda Interfaces, and a lot of this is the same information. This is back when they were talking about Crank software. So Crank software is this company, and they make an embedded graphical user interface framework. So my understanding of how this works is Crank software provides the platform that you can use to build these human-machine interfaces and the user interfaces, and Andromeda is using their tools to build the interface. And so you see in here, they have a big circle around this indicating the range. And I think this is a much better indication of range than this. There was a article out of Charged EV magazine. This is a while back, in 2015, but it gives a little bit more of the history of Aptera and Andromeda. In 2007, Brian Gallagher, who's the CEO of Andromeda, joined Aptera as employee number 3. Now, I don't know if employee number 3 means like he was the third person, that's like Steve Fambro, and then Chris Anthony, and then number 3 was Brian Gallagher, or if it means like there was Steve and Chris, and then they hired 2 other people, and then Gallagher was the third hire. Anyway, he was in Aptera very early, like on the ground floor. And then shortly afterward, okay, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, but Kevin Coleho joined him as the seventh employee of Aptera. So back in 2007, Gallagher and so Brian and Kevin were one of the original employees. Then they stayed there until it peaked out, and then they formed Andromeda Interfaces because they were like the interface guys for the original Aptera, and they decided, you know, EVs are going to be a thing. I think we can make a business out of this. So they did, and this is their company. And as you can see, they have several companies that they all already work with, which they mentioned in the Aptera press release. They are Verendi and Vantage Vehicles. Verendi makes this green machine. These are like small machines that like small backhoes and like sort of like a bobcat, and they're electric, and so they provide the user interface for these things. And there's this Vantage Vehicle. They produce these small vehicles that are used in fleets, like in applications of like large corporate offices or airports or farms. Or so these aren't these aren't vehicles made for the street, but they're made to do work within a kind of a private area to move stuff around. And they use Andromeda interfaces. So Andromeda interface, I suspect they are revenue positive. Because they've been around since 2011. They only have 6 employees. So it's a very small company. I suspect most of them are engineers. And when they started this company, they didn't need a lot of capital to start because they're basically a software company, essentially. And so they just, they don't have that many capital needs. So I suspect that they were just running based on their revenue, and they did not need injections of capital to keep themselves going. So they're revenue positive. Yet they decided to join Aptera Motors in an all-equity deal. That means that they got Aptera stock, but no money. So they get no money out of this deal. So Aptera acquires them for no capital other than their stock. This basically means that Brian Gallagher, he has a company that I suspect was making money and self-sustaining, and he believes in Aptera so much that he is willing to merge his company under Aptera, a company that's making money, in exchange for equity. So if Aptera goes under, he's basically sold his whole company for nothing. But if Aptera does well, then he's going to do well because he gets equity in the thing. That basically tells me that Brian and Kevin and the other owners of Andromeda really believe in the financial future of Aptera, which I think is a good thing because they're sort of insiders. They kind of know more than us, and that's a good thing. Kevin Coleho, who is their chief operating officer and the second in command there, he's actually a mechanical engineer. And so here he was. He was a mechanical engineer for Aptera for 2 years back in 2007. And so we went through that. So I think that is very interesting that they believe in it so much. And because they provide software to like places like Vantage and Verendi, they are actually bringing in revenue. And Aptera is sort of a supplier at this point. So in the previous video, we talked about how Aptera was outsourcing a lot of their parts and to suppliers, and that they would vertically integrate. I suspected that they would vertically integrate as they could with more capital and as they grew. Well, it looks like they're starting to vertically integrate already a little bit. And in this case, it's because they were able to do it with just equity. And it was basically a very small acquisition. It's a very small company with 6 employees. It gives them access to good engineers that they know, and they get a revenue stream, and they got it for equity, which doesn't burn any cash, and a startup company needs cash to run. Overall, seems like a really good move for everyone involved. And the other thing that I want to point out is there is this guy who runs this YouTube channel called Blaze Tech Studios. He's been doing mock-ups of companion apps, like a phone app for the Aptera, and he's just a guy that professionally does this, but is a big Aptera fan. He was doing this kind of as a hobby, but he has a skill set that actually is useful to Aptera, and Aptera has partnered with him, and he is going to be working with Aptera on producing their companion app, helping produce their companion app. So I've reached out to this guy, and I think further on when he has more information, we'll probably get an interview with him and maybe get some good information about the app, because I think it's really exciting. The app that he mocked up on YouTube was really cool, and I think it's great that a fan is part of developing the interface, and he seems very open to suggestions. So if you guys have suggestions, you should go to his YouTube channel and like give him suggestions for how you want the companion app to work. So anyway, a lot of people that believe in Aptera are joining the team. This gentleman and then the guys at Andromeda. And I think there's a lot of exciting things happening right now, and hopefully the other suppliers will be just as enthusiastic to work with them. And from what I heard from Chris Andy, that seems to be what the case is. Okay, thanks for watching. And before I end, I wanted to thank all of our sponsors, Paul Rebarczyk, Harry Hawk, Paul Evans, Jaron Harding, John Malcolm, Ademchi Onyenadum, Don Desert, and then BB and Enoch at the 100 kilowatt level. Thank you very much. And then Go Climb a Rock, Dean McManus. Dean McManus has been with our channel from the very beginning, and Jeremy Horlacher. So thank you very much for your support, guys. And then lastly, there is going to be a Q&A session. We can just hang out, talk about Aptera. If you guys have any questions about the site visit that I didn't cover in any of these videos, I'll try to answer them, and we can speculate about what things are going on. If this becomes popular, maybe we'll do it kind of monthly or something like that. But anyways, it'll be 8 p.m. Pacific time this Saturday, so please join us. And thank you so much for watching, and have a great day, guys.